And we are also learning brand new details about the night of the Benghazi terror attack and one of the most severely wounded survivors who risked his life to help save his colleagues and then spent hours and hours waiting for medical help. His story is a whole new chapter in the Benghazi story, and you're going to hear it here live today. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Kelly Wright, in for Bill Hemmer. Diplomatic security agent David Ubben says he ran into the burning consulate to help recover the body of Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith. He then fought alongside former Navy SEALs Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty, who died as they tried to fight off the attack. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us live now in Washington with more details about this story. And Catherine, does this prove the attack was in fact premeditated?
Well, Kelly, confidential sources tell Fox News that during the second wave of the attack, diplomatic security agent David Ubben was on the roof of the CIA annex along with former Navy SEALs Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty. In another sign, the attacks were premeditated. 3 mortar rounds rained down on the compound. The first fell short of the annex about 50 yards away, but the subsequent mortar rounds were direct hits. Both Woods and Doherty were killed, with the mortar shredding Ubben's right leg. Now at least 3 senior administration officials, then Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, former CIA Director David Petraeus, and the former head of the Africa Command, General Carter Ham, saying over the weekend that they knew it was terrorism within hours of the attack. And with hearings scheduled on Benghazi this fall, lawmakers hope that David Ubben will feel that he is well enough and able to publicly testify because he's one of the only survivors to witness both waves of the attack, the first at the consulate and then the second at the CIA compound, Kelly.
You know, he went through such a difficult ordeal from his story. So what are we learning now about the actual evacuation?
Well, having made direct contact with Ubben, Fox News is obscuring this photo to respect his request for privacy as he remains focused on his family and his recovery alongside America's wounded warriors from Afghanistan and Iraq at Walter Reed. He was injured so severely that 10 months later he is still being treated at that Walter Reed Medical Center. 4 State Department employees, including Ubben, were injured at Benghazi, and those who know the diplomatic security agents say the response on the night was inadequate on many levels.
That's a good question. No, it wasn't a medical plane.
Is that what he told you?
I'm just saying, it wasn't a medical plane. That medical plane has a door big enough to get somebody on a gurney through it without turning them sideways. We owed our people better than they got.
There's actually no reference to a medical plane as being part of the evacuation in the State Department's independent review of the attack, and there's no specific reference in the testimony of then Secretary of State Clinton nor former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta. We asked the State Department whether one was sent, and they said it's already been thoroughly investigated, and they had nothing to add, Kelly.
Catherine Herridge, we thank you for that report.
Boy, what happened?
Yeah.
David Ubben waited for 20 hours after he was hit on that rooftop with Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty. His leg was shredded. We know that he's been recovering for 10 months at Walter Reed, as Catherine just reported. He was defending the U.S. consulate, and then no medical aircraft apparently was sent to the scene to get him out of there. How could this be? How did all of this happen? Those are the questions that we hope we're going to get some answers to in the hearings that are coming up in the fall that Catherine also just mentioned. And Byron York joins me now, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor. Byron, for so long, we have all wondered when we would hear the stories of the survivors. And there have been a lot of questions about why they haven't been speaking. And now that one is, he has quite a story, it would appear, to tell.
Well, he does, and the amazing thing about Catherine's story is that members of Congress who've been investigating this for months and months have not heard it. They have never heard from a survivor who was on the ground in Benghazi that night of September 11, 2012, and they have tried and not been able to do it. Remember, in May, there was a very dramatic testimony from Gregory Hicks, who was a top U.S. State Department official, but he was hundreds of miles away in Tripoli, and his story was pretty dramatic. Imagine what we'll hear from the people who are actually there. Now, recently, Frank Wolf, a congressman from Virginia, accused the State Department of actually making Benghazi survivors sign non-disclosure agreements, saying they wouldn't talk about this. Now, the State Department said that is not true. They have not done that. But the fact is, we haven't heard from any of these people. Republicans are hoping to hear from them in September.
Yeah, and you wonder why. I mean, it makes no sense, really, that they wouldn't want to speak out about what happened that night. It was no doubt a traumatic night for all of them, and they have a story to tell, and it's hard to imagine why they would not be able to tell their story unless they had been encouraged not to. But as you say, the State Department says that that's not the case. You know, I think about the president, Byron, talking about the phony scandals out there, and then I think of David Ubben on the rooftop for 20 hours. Waiting to be rescued by somebody from his own country. How do you, as a president, not address that?
Boy, this really does not help. You're right. The president, in all three of his speeches this week in Illinois and Missouri and Florida, said that Republicans were playing politics with, quote, phony scandals. Now, the survivors themselves, their families, and the families of those people who were killed, all four people who were killed there, are looking at this and saying, this is not a phony scandal. This is not a phony event. It really actually happened. And again, Republicans have had a very, very difficult time on this. Democrats have wanted to move on or stress some other areas of the story. I mean, Benghazi is a multifaceted story. You have why weren't we prepared? Why haven't the perpetrators been caught yet? And then you have what did we do to help those people who were under attack for several hours, not just a few minutes, but for 7 or 8 hours on the night of September 11th. So that's the part the Republicans have had the most trouble finding out about, and that's the part they're going to keep pressing in September.
And Byron, my mind goes back to the order to stand down and how none of this may have happened if that order to stand down had not been given, and we still don't know who gave that order. So that remains a really serious question here as well. Byron, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
And while we're on this topic, a brand new Fox News poll on the consulate attack is out. The poll finding a majority of voters think President Obama should have ordered U.S. troops to go in and help the Americans in Benghazi. 62% say the president should have sent troops into military action. 24% say the president was right in not sending U.S. forces.